Hi, I'm Gary Rush, Certified Professional Facilitator, and I want to spend a few minutes with you explaining brainstorming the way it's supposed to be done. All right, so we're going to do brainstorming done right. Now let me set the stage with what brainstorming is about. Brainstorming was actually created in 1939 by a man by the name of Alex Osborne. If you're familiar with advertising in New York, there's a firm called BBDO. He's the O. He's one of the founders of BBDO, and in 1939 he was the CEO. He felt that the companies he was dealing with, including his own, they were not being as creative as they should be, primarily because they were dismissing ideas before they got a chance to let them grow and evolve and get through them, because they would look at it and go, oh, that's a dumb idea. So he said, the thing we need to do is we need to separate that ideation bit from all those great ideas and that evaluation bit. By the way, he never said to eliminate the evaluation. He said separate them. So we do the ideation, we do the evaluation later on or separately. Now, brainstorming is not used for anything and everything. It is a means to an end only. The end is something that we need to work on. It gets us a lot of material to work on, so I use a lot in planning workshops to do objectives and strategies and that type of thing. I do it in problem-solving workshops when we want to list out what are all the causes or the symptoms or the solutions. We use it in IT workshops when we're listing out elements of things. Anytime you've got to list out a lot of material to work with, brainstorming works beautifully. It does not work when you have the ideas already there. For instance, definitions. Brainstorming a definition is kind of like watching paint dry. It's horrible. And we've already got definitions, so you don't brainstorm it. A simpler technique for that is called, let's talk about it. Or grab a dictionary and start from there and change it from there. You also don't want to brainstorm a number. I actually watched a facilitator once. He said, all right, folks, we're going to brainstorm how much money we're going to spend on this project over the next year. Okay, and the group obliged him. $1, $2, $3, $4, $5. It's already been done. It's called the numerical system, 0 to infinity. Pick one of them. Someone brainstormed that years ago. You don't have to worry about it. So you don't brainstorm things like that because it's absolutely the wrong tool. You do other techniques like talk. So brainstorming is a means to an end. It is never used on an agenda, because it is a means to an end. I put whatever it is I'm listing on the agenda, not the word brainstorming. And it also means there are no such things as brainstorming sessions. It means nothing, because it's not the end result. You brainstorm for what? What are we brainstorming? Oh, we need better objectives. Great. It's an objective definition session. Brainstorming happens to be the means to get there. So I seldom, if ever, use the word in a workshop. I typically come in and say, listen, we're going to list out all of your objectives. We're going to do it in 2 steps. First step, we're going to list it without arguing, questioning, and criticizing. The second step, we're going to argue, question, and criticize. And that's how I explain it. So let me explain the steps that Osborne developed. First step is very important and often forgotten by people, and that is think. And this is especially true if you have some introverts in your group and they're sitting there going, okay, I got to come with ideas. Introverts don't think that way. You have to give them some time to think. So what Osborne said is take 5 minutes, sit there quietly at your desk with a piece of paper and a pencil, and I want you to think of all these ideas. Whatever pops in, just write them down. It'll kind of prime the pump, if you will, for when you get ready to contribute ideas. So you give them 5 minutes to do that. Now, while they're doing that, you want to take the time and you want to get set. Now, I use flip charts to list. It's old-fashioned, but it works really well. Once you understand how to do it, you can use any tool you want. All right? It's not the tool. You've got to understand the basics. So I'm going to show you on the very basic, the elementary way, and then you can expand it however you want later on. Brainstorming is based on word association. This is a blank sheet of paper. We need to put a word on there to associate it with it. And I always use 2 easels when I do this because I want to keep one easel always visible. And so I'll write on one and go to the other one, write, and go back and forth until I'm all done. To help out, while they're thinking, I'm going to spend that time getting prepared. And I'm going to come up here and I'm going to write what we're listing. Now, when you write something meaningful. I've actually watched facilitators get up here and do this. Let's list out ideas. Ideas about what? It's so vague it means nothing, and if you're really into George Carlin, we could have written stuff up there and leave it at that. It doesn't help. So you want to list something that means something, and 1 or 2 words is plenty. I've watched people write a half a paragraph up there, that takes up half the easel, that's ridiculous. 1 or 2 words that just capture what it is you're listing very quickly. Get both of them set. Now, when they're done thinking, the next thing we want to do is then we list. Listing, most people have been participating in workshops where they listed like this, and most facilitators do this well. It's pretty hard to goof up, although some people manage to do that. When I say list, whatever they say gets written down up here, period. Now, some people like to list, they do it with 2 different colors. They alternate between them, between say black and blue or black and green. That's okay, you can list that way, or you can do it all in 1 color. It doesn't make any difference. Whatever you choose, be consistent. If you do black and blue and then 2 black, people are going to get really confused and wonder why you did 2 black. Drives them nuts. So be consistent when you do it. So now we're going to list. When I say list whatever they say, I mean whatever they say. So if we're listing out objectives and someone says, Fred's an idiot, I write Fred's an idiot up there. Now, I will get rid of that later on, but if you stop it now, the problem is now you're pushing back. And they're going to start messing with you. If you write it down, they're going to go, oops, I better not do that. So it's the easiest way to control them. The other thing that I watch people do is we'll write ideas up here and suddenly someone will repeat something. Okay, write it up here multiple times. If I say something 4 times, it should be written up here 4 times. Don't edit out duplicates. We'll get rid of those later on. Oddly enough, some of those times those duplicates generate other ideas. So getting rid of them now is contrary to what brainstorming is really all about. So whatever they say, you write. Now think about it. How do you know when they're done? Well, dead silence is a pretty good clue, but not immediately. When they're listening, some people have called this popcorning because what happens, you get a lot of ideas and then it comes down. You get some more ideas and it comes down. Oh. And that's how brainstorming tends to work. And so they'll shout out a lot of ideas and then it'll slow down a little bit and someone will have another idea that'll stimulate a whole bunch of other thoughts and you get a whole bunch of other ideas. What happens is you get to the point where you look around the room and people are done and they're like this. Their forehead's moving, the eyebrows are moving, they're thinking. Just stand quietly and let them think. Now, if everybody's sitting there and you look around the room and they're like this, they're probably done. And I just check. Folks, it looks like you're done. If you have other ideas, no problem, we'll add them later on. No big deal. All right, we don't want to lose good ideas. That would be kind of fruitless. So that's how you list. And I'll show you that in just a minute. Now, the last step is where it usually gets messed up in most sessions. We analyze. When people analyze, like objectives, for instance, I've watched facilitators get up here and say, all right, we've got a bunch of objectives. How can we categorize these? Well, if I were a participant, they wouldn't like me very well because, and I've done this, they said, how can we categorize it? Well, we can do it alphabetically. I could do anything alphabetically. It's meaningless, but I could do it. If you don't know where you're going, I'll drive you somewhere. The facilitator needs to know what we're producing. You've got to know what is an objective. How many are we looking for? How do you distinguish one from the other? How do you know it's truly an objective? You've got to understand what it is you're building because, like I said, brainstorming is a means to an end. If you don't know the end, you're going nowhere. So you need to understand, you don't want to ask the group. You don't ask them how to categorize. You don't ask them what to do with the list. You don't ask them to prioritize all the time. If you're not prioritizing, there's no reason to prioritize a list of items. And when you get done with brainstorming, you've got to go through and understand the list first anyways because it's top of head ideas. So you've got to know what you're doing with brainstorming first, and I'll show you that in just a minute. Now, some rules that you can follow are these. You can use these rules. All ideas are allowed, no judgment, suspend the discussion, just keep going. These are fine. The easiest way is let's list all your ideas, don't argue, question, or criticize, and then when we get to it, we'll argue, question, and criticize. That's the way I work, and it works out fine. But the rules are okay. The analysis bit, you've got to plan it ahead of time. I spend more time planning out these than I do any other type of step in my workshops because I have a lot of material to deal with, and I really need to know what I'm doing with it before I do it. So you've got to plan it out ahead of time. You've got to know what you're producing, what is an objective, how many am I looking for, and make sure that when you ask for this, you don't ask broad questions like how do we solve world hunger. Don't be afraid to reemphasize this. People are going, you got that popcorning effect. As it's winding down a little bit, I remind them, okay, objectives, how about targets, things you want to accomplish, anything like that that really gets them thinking about this and generating more ideas. Don't be afraid to stop if it looks like they're quiet. Just tell them we can add ideas later on, but don't stop as soon as they take a deep breath. Otherwise, you lose a lot of good ideas. And always understand how to analyze it. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to practice one. We're going to take a look at objectives. Let's say you were a business, doesn't matter what type of business, but you're a business. And you want to accomplish something as a business. And we might come in a strategic plan or kind of a planning type activity and say, all right, what are your objectives over the next 3 to 5 years? And people are going to shout out their objectives. And here's the typical objectives we're going to get. They're going to get make money. So maybe we'll get these, say we get these 3. Now, one of the things you might notice is that when I'm brainstorming, I generally don't want to fill in all the spaces. And the reason I want to do that is because normally I've got to go back and do something with the list. And rewriting this on another flip chart to basically repeating all this stuff so I have space to write it doesn't make sense. So I kind of plan ahead of time what I'm doing with the list. With objectives, I'm going to go, probably it's about 6 or 8 pages, typically what it'll be. My average is somewhere between 8 and 12 pages that people list out. I've gone up to 16 pages maybe twice in my life. And if it's something really specific like requirements in IT, it's the most meaningless word we've got in IT. It means whatever. And so those go on longer. But most things like objectives, you're not going to get a lot of pages because most businesses don't have 1,000 objectives. So just keep that in mind as you're doing this. So I've gone back and forth and I've listed out all of your objectives. The next step, I need to come back and do something with this. Now objectives, I know that an objective in order to be meaningful has to be specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-based. I've planned that in advance and I found it out. So what I'm going to do is come back here and say, all right, here's your first objective. Is that objective, is that specific? Well, not really. Okay, how much money are you going to make? Well, we want to make, let's say we want to make $1 million. Okay. Is that specific? Well, not really, because we don't know whether we're going to make it gross or whether we're going to be net or whatever. So I'm going to be working through this until this thing is smart, and it could take me a while. I've got to go through that until we understand what objectives we're going to pursue as a business. I plan that out well in advance. And I start writing, editing up here until it works, until we have a well-defined objective. Let's take a different example. Let's say that you've got something real simple. You've got a manager, she's retiring in a month, and the group has gotten together and they've said, you know, we want to buy her a really neat retirement gift. And they've asked me to facilitate it to identify what are we going to buy her for retirement. All right, so let's do that. So what I'm going to list on the top, we're getting the group to brainstorm a list of retirement gifts, right? So I'm going to label it that way. Retirement gifts. Great. Now we've got a list of, now we've got set for all the gifts. I'm going to give them 5 minutes to think about some ideas. We're out them all down. Great. Now that your ideas are done, let's get them up here, shout out, whatever you might think of. Okay. Etc. So I keep on writing, whatever they say, and it's something like this, retirement gifts, especially something this broad, that could easily be 8, 10, 12 pages. So they will go that long. Great. So now I've got a list of all possible retirement gifts. And if you notice, some of them might seem to be a little bit extreme, right? And some of them might be a little bit more realistic. The problem is a lot of facilitators come back and say, all right, now let's pick one of these. Or let's prioritize, pick the one that you all like the most, right? The trouble is that none of these are workable at the moment. They're top of head. When people shout out ideas, they don't have well-formed ideas. Tickets to what? For what? How much? Restaurant. Which restaurant? You're going to buy her retirement gift a Happy Meal at McDonald's, or you're going to buy her a dinner at Per Se? What are you doing? Same thing with all of these. So you've really got to go back, and before you do something with the list, you've got to clean it up. Make sure it's a list that's workable. So I would go through and I would not eliminate. People say, a car, we can't afford a car. What if she was really into modeling and you bought her a model car? We can't buy her a house. What if she was into doll houses and you bought her a doll house to assemble in her retirement? You can't dismiss things too quickly. What you've got to do is make sure that they're clear and you understand them, and then we go through and do something with the list. Now, in the case of retirement gifts, we're going to go through and clean it up. What do you mean by car? What do you mean by house? Tickets to what? How much? When? Make this thing a real gift. You don't buy a ticket as a gift. You buy a ticket to see a certain play at a certain time as a gift. And so you want to make sure that these are legitimate gifts. So we're going to word these properly, get rid of the ones that are duplicates. We'll get rid of the ones that nobody understands what they mean, perhaps, or could not ever become a gift. We're going to go through and clean up the list, and then we might prioritize. Now, we'll prioritize, we'll follow a certain process, but we're not just going to get up here and say, all right, which one's most important to y'all? We'll follow a process to do this. So brainstorming really is a process of gathering a lot of ideas without arguing with people, without dismissing the ideas too quickly, and allowing the ideas to flow. You get all kinds of ideas. You get the creative ideas and the innovative ideas by allowing the ideas to flow, by not editing them, by not assessing or eliminating anything. Just whatever they say, right? And then you plan exactly what you're going to do with it. That is how you properly brainstorm.